Alright, YouTube, you've seen the thumbnail, you know why you're here. I'm worried about the perk system. Now, before I get into it, just a quick disclaimer, guys. I think evolving Overwatch as a game and introducing perks and everything is amazing, right? But what's important to learn about perks and systems like this is that preferably I don't want them to perhaps take away weaknesses from characters, rather build upon their existing core fantasy, right? So I think that is where the perk system can shine the most, is when you start to take the hero fantasy of a character and you allow it to be built upon their current gameplay loop, but not introduce something new, right? You could argue that the perk systems could just be minor quality of life changes, but then there's some perks that are a little bit way too absurd. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Because while I'm excited for season 15, 16, and beyond, and I have a more positive outlook for Overwatch just in general, I think there's a few things in here that perhaps people are sleeping upon potential-wise. Now, I could be hilariously wrong about all of this, but I need to make some content. You need to hear something stupid from my mouth so you can roast me in the comments. And that's why we're here together on this video. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the perks that stand out like sore thumbs. Number one, we have Winston's level 3 perk, Revitalizing Barrier. Barrier Projector can now heal allies within it for 30 healing a second. Now, on paper, this doesn't look that strong, but I want everybody to consider that one of 𝐓𝐼𝐈𝐓𝐄𝐑's biggest weaknesses has always been 𝐓𝐼𝐈 cannot take prolonged fights, right? That is because usually when like 𝐓𝐼𝐈 commits to a dive, they are going to use up their resources, their cooldown, sometimes even their ultimates to commit to, going for a pick. And if that pick doesn't work out, the reason that 𝐓𝐼𝐈 would then back off and stage another dive is because they don't have the cooldowns and resources to commit, and perhaps they want to quickly protect their supports in case the dive didn't go well and the enemy counter dive, etc., etc. The problem I have with Winston's Revitalizing Barrier is that this, to a certain extent, does take away a really big weakness for dive, which is sustained fights. This now begins to allow a sustained fight to happen for dive team comps, right? Imagine your Genji, your Tracer, your Winston jump into the backline, Revitalizing Barrier comes up, it's healing for 30 a second. Tracer can extend that fight just a little bit longer before her recall. Genji can take a little bit of a longer fight. Maybe it's an Echo that's coming in. Maybe, your Morris in there doing the self-healing with the 30 healing from the barrier. She feels unkillable. So these are some things that I'm feeling like, hey, why are we seeing a healing creep in the game again, but now we're seeing a healing creep happen across the roster? Well, it's mostly in tank, where there are some abilities that are now beginning to help out, like, the rest of the roster, tank, like now healing the rest of the teams. Because then you have Roadhog, where, let me just bring up the infographic, and this time I didn't forget the infographic on the screen, guys. This time I didn't forget it. Here it is. So you can see Roadhog's is level 3 as well, is Take a Breather begins to heal allies for 50% of its healing. Why would you not want this, right? And my biggest concern is that, are we about to see another healing creep into the game, but this time we are seeing the healing creep come in from the tank role. Now, granted that you have to get to level 3, but let's be real, guys. We're going to be playing the game. All of us are going to get to level 3 at some point. All of these abilities will be coming online in a game, in a normal game of Overwatch. Let's be real, right? So I do have this small concern that, well, is this really the right way forward to take some of the tanks in this direction, right? Because then on the other side of the coin, you also have abilities like this. If we look at Ramatra's level 3, the Nanite Repair, that gives Ramatra some self-sustain where he can be healed for 50 healing a second while he's within the Revenous Vortex. So the way I basically see it is that sustain is going up in power. And my question is, well, since 5v5 is the current main core format, did we really need more sustain on top of all the other like passives and everything that are in the game? This could potentially make the game like feeling like a little bit more stressful to play, especially since very, 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 and I seriously mean very few DPS might be getting a raw number increase through their, level 3, full upgrade or full builds, whatever you want to call it. So this is like one of my small concerns, is like, upon first glance, I think tanks and supports got some really, really strong changes, and then like, there's maybe one or two tanks or one or two supports that really just got quality of life changes. Now, my next concern is exactly that, is that it feels like some abilities don't necessarily scale that well compared to others. Let's go to the support role and talk about some of the, new level 2 minor perks and major perks in there, from Baptiste to Mercy. So let's get started with Mercy. I think you guys are going to see why I'm a little bit worried, right? So Mercy's first passive is Angelic Recovery, that she'll heal herself for 15 healing a second second, while the Caduceus staff is attached to a fully healed ally. The 15 healing a second is really not that much, and it's only going to ever be important if, for example, like you're in a Pharah Mercy comp and they're not shooting the Pharah and they're shooting you, etc., etc. So it's whatever. In my personal opinion, I think the Guardian Angel range increased by 30% is much stronger here. But you can clearly see, like, these two changes are kind of like, okay, you know what, like, these are nice. These are some quality of life changes. Then you go over to her level 3. This is where, I would argue that Mercy is finally a viable support compared to today's standards. But the sad thing is that the standards are about to be moved like crazy. I'm going to take you guys there in just a second, right? So then you go over to Mercy's level 3 abilities. Chain Boost is secondary fire links to a second nearby ally. We have to see the range on this thing, and everything might even not be that good, right? Then you have the Flash Heal, which I actually think is going to be the best level 3 ability on her, where Res can be used as a new ability where the Caduceus Staff's active target will take 150 burst healing right away, and then doing so will trigger the res cooldown for 15 seconds. So basically, instead of resing an ally in that fight, you can immediately burst heal them for raw 150, which is crazy when you think about it, right? Now, I did say that, wow, in today's standards, this would finally bring Mercy up to par, because as we know, Mercy's been by far one of the worst supports in the game, if not the worst support in the game, in the roster, maybe other than Life Fever. So let's take a look at who she has to compete with and if she can measure up to the other supports in the role. For example, on the other side of the coin, you got Baptiste, where in my opinion, this guy got 4 major perks across his entire, kit, right? So number 1, Field Medicine, Immortality Field, restores 80 HP to nearby allies and then 40 HP to Bap when the Immortality Field is actually destroyed. Then on the other hand, you have Automated Healing, where after placing your Amp Matrix down, your shoulder turret will just randomly start to heal people as well, restoring 25 healing a second. Remember, when you put your Amp Matrix down and the shoulder turret does shoot through it, it's going to do 50 healing a second combined with Baptiste's right click. This is an insane increase to his healing output almost immediately the second he levels up, right? And it's really not that hard to build his amplification matrix up regardless. So on the other hand, you actually have his proper major perks, which is the Assault Burst, where Regenerative Burst will give Bap 20% raw attack speed increase for 4 seconds, guys, but no longer will instantly heal him. This is like slightly irrelevant. And then Rocket Boots, while the airborne, from the Exo Boost, you can press space again to then dash even further forward by dashing horizontally. That is crazy. So Baptiste sees a huge buff when it comes to his perks compared to Mercy, right? And then again, I have the same problem with Illari. As you guys already know on this channel, Illari is my favorite support to play. She's got Rapid Construction, where the healing pylon will build 300% faster and the cooldown goes down by 1.5 seconds. Then she's got Summer Solstice on her, the second minor perk, which is Illari's flight time during Captive Sun, is increased by 3 seconds and her flight speed is increased by 20%. Again, all of this is just so pathetic compared to what we just read on Baptiste's side. Like, oh, great, my healing pylon will build even faster. Like, how is this even a thing, right? Like, how is this even comparable to what Baptiste is able to do, right? And then you look over to her major perks, which is number 1, Solar Power. Fully charged solar rival hits will grant you 12.5% of your max solar energy, so that's her healing energy, overfilling up to 50%. So you can overfill your healing the longer you DPS, which is, again, honestly, it's like a nice, like, little quality of life thing, but it just, in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily scale that well, right? Because do you really need your healing to overfill when the pylon is going to be doing the massive amount of healing anyway? It's just one of those things where it's a little bit weird, Then on the Sunburn, you got the Outburst, ignites enemies, dealing an additional 70 damage over 3 seconds. So remember, guys, this 70 damage will build up over 3 seconds. It's not going to be an instantaneous 70 damage. So it can be out-healed, it can be outlived, and all this type of stuff. So when you kind of come down to Ilya, maybe I'm misunderstanding some of these perks here, and maybe in practicality they'll be a lot better than I think. And like I said, I'm always open to being proven wrong, because that's the whole point of being a human. If you're living your day-to-day life without, like, experimenting with ideas and wanting to see if you're right or wrong, then are you really a human being? Every day is a new experience. You're meant to learn something, improve your knowledge, and kind of go from there. So anyways, upon first glance, I do have to say, I look at, like, the situation with, like, Baptiste, and then, like, you look at Mercy and Illari, it's just kind of like, hey, well, 2 of these got some really nice quality of life. The other one just gets giga buffed for no reason. Then you have to take a quick look at Brigitte as well. And then you got barrier restoration. So, you know, shield bash restores 100 health to the barrier shield when it hits an enemy. Then you got morale boost, and spiral can last 3 seconds longer if you activate it by whip shot. Now you're almost always activating by whip shot, and that's like a full raw increase to her heal uptime, which is ridiculous when you think about it. Then you look at her major, and it's like quick fix. The repair packs can instantly heal an additional health to critical health allies. That's absurd. And then if you want to lean into the more aggressive playstyle, you get into whiplash, where the whip shot knockback can slam enemies into the wall, dealing another 50 extra damage. So if you're playing in a little bit more of those closed maps, you basically get the whiplash as a doom punch. And I've seen people in the playtest, like, you know, do some one-shot combos with this. So it is pretty damn strong. Like, you look at how Brig and Bap are getting power crept, and then you just look at Mercy and Illari, and they're just kind of like, you know, they're kind of okay. You know, and then like there's a full different case with Juno and all of this, but I think we'll save that for another video. Let's look at some of the DPS perks as well. And like I was talking about, you know, like we're about to go down some pretty absurd territory. So as you guys know, you know, Genji has 2 perks, one in major, one in minor, that are pretty much useless. Okay, so Tracer, on the other hand, is pretty insane. Like, for example, you have to remember, right, one of Genji's major perks is literally that on a condition, his Swift Strike can now do bleed damage. But do you know what one of Tracer's major perks is? Well, she could just randomly get all her blinks back and potentially have 8 blinks in a team fight, which is absurd. And the pulse bomb radius gets increased, which is like, wow. Like, Tracer, I don't see how Tracer is not the best DPS in the game, right? Like, with these buffs coming through. So this is basically what I'm talking about. Is like, while the perk system is nice and all, I think Blizzard has to be very, very, very swift with how quickly they can either change or balance out some of the ways these perks are working. I fundamentally agree that the perks are the future for this game, to help evolve it, to make it fresh and all of this. That is perfectly fine. But you must make sure that the perks and what they enable is dealt with quickly. This doesn't mean that you gutter or nerf the perks. You adjust them to be relative to the rest of the roster, so that you don't have, you know, a problem across the entire role. Otherwise, you're generally going to have a ban meta. I even made a tweet back on my Twitter, you know, or X account, whatever you want to call it, where I said that, you know, Doomfist is about to be spamming empowered punches with his, like, you know, like loadout for the perks and everything. So this is an area that Overwatch has to be really careful with how it enters it and how it begins to dwell with, because I think, you know, this is like extremely exciting, but this might also be really, really scary. So that's just my perspective on all of this, guys. I'm excited, but I'm also just a little bit worried. My only hope is that I really hope there's a really big balance patch that comes with this, because I'm not going to lie, the only thing that can disappoint me is that if somehow all these perks come into the game and Blizzard didn't do a big giga patch to completely restart Overwatch with it, then I can't lie, it feels a little bit lazy. Right? Because it's like, oh, the game's perfect. We don't need to change anything. We're going to be putting this in anyway. So anyways, everybody, that's going to be it for this video. I will see you in tomorrow's live stream. There'll be no new video tomorrow, but there'll be a live stream where we will go live with Overwatch late at night for me. We're going to be running some quick play and, if possible, ranked games, and trying out the new perk system and seeing how everything goes and exploring everything Overwatch. If you are interested in that type of content, again, hit like and subscribe. Free way to support the channel. With that being said, I will see you in the next video.